the European position on software patents was a bit hazy. And the view was that although we had some pretty innovative elements in that things, we felt that this was a deep enough engine and deep enough things that we would make sure that the architecture was made. It was very difficult for people to discover what was running behind the scenes. So we created it so it's more difficult to go in and from a protection point of view. But the other element of this was the branding, which is key. And the problems we all have in an online space is actually saying, okay, what are you going to call it? And there is a real need, if you've got a business that is going to be fully global, for the name to be able to operate in all languages, be pronounced in all the different languages. And for us, it was actually securing .com end to the name. If we were a UK company, or we're just supplying UK, .co.uk is absolutely fine. But we needed, there's a cachet about .com. And we needed to get a 4-letter .com names, most of them have gone. And we finally came up with the idea of UDO as a name. And the words of that is because a lot of the time, all our competitors were doing it themselves, and so we were using the idea that you did it. And so that's where the name UDO came from. Unfortunately, somebody had udo.com, but we couldn't find it, first of all. It took us a long time to find who was this person behind the udo.com, who was hidden behind various walls, etc. And finally, I did track him down. My heart sunk when I realized that, he was a graduate from, Amos Tuck business management course. And I thought, oh shit, he knows the value of this. And so he was in Philadelphia, and they weren't using it. They thought it was something else to do with redesigning sort of gambling halls, and they had the name. So I finally got in touch with him, and he said, well, something like $120,000 would do, So I then said, well, that does it for me, because we've got a fantastic name which we're going to use, so it's just a shame you're not using it, etc. And I let it go. So then I sort of rang him up and I said, look, I'm just happened to be going through Philadelphia, and which I wasn't, of course. And could we meet up? And there was 2 very good bottles of wine. And then we finally settled on a figure that was $5,000 now, and then another $5,000 in 6 months down, another $5,000. So by the time we'd done that, we're best buddies, and we had it. But the key point about branding is, you've got to think about the name, but also you've got to think about securing all the relative .coms very fast. Once we decided on our names, of course, we had to go out and secure everything with UDO, UDO.it, UDO France, etc. And as we have all of go around the world very fast, because somebody then is going to get hold of it and hold you to ransom on those things. So that was the only mistake we made, but it was quite interesting. It was a company search, that's all it was. And there's people who are watching for who's looking for company names and company searches, and they will just say, right. And then, of course, when you've got that image, we then decided to apply for trademarks in America and in European trademarks for UDO. So we had the branding, we had the name, and now we had the software which was being written. One of the tricks that we had to do was to, in fact, launch this software and end the relationship with our American partners and not lose any clients, introducing them with a new software. You know how buggy new software is, so they had to then switch over from the software we were using beforehand in the States and used UDO software, and that's one of the reasons why we had to do so much testing and why we're using such a good software house, is the coding had to be really good. That got us onto base point 1 as a business of how we were now in command of our own intellectual property. The contract with the software development house was such that all of the intellectual property is ours, and that intellectual property is in escrow, and etc. at all times. And we have a long-term agreement with them in terms of support and things that's important that you cover that end off. But the difference between running a company that owns your own software, owns your own intellectual property, is dramatically different than if you're in fact just an agent for that, both in terms of designing your own destiny and in terms of value of the company that you have. And the destiny, certainly in this world we live in, is something which is so important to control.